Greetings. My name is Chris Carr. I'm a recipient of the Creative Rebuilds NY Teaching Artist Grant. This grant will allow me to work with Otsego 2000 from now until June in a number of capacities. One initiative that I'm excited to announce is Otsego 2000 Presents, a discussion series. We're going to speak to folks from Otsego County with the goal of amplifying voices, with the goal of highlighting those folks who are strong community members. And we will be speaking to folks from outside of Otsego County with the goal of sharing best practices and information that may inspire our viewers. This will be a discussion, not a lecture, so feel free to comment, share, send us notes, like, follow, and let's build. Hello, everybody. This is Chris from Otsego 2000 Presents, our interview series where we talk to wonderful people about their connection to the ecosystem, nature, the planet, the universe, themselves, and how they then take that passion and work in community, work with institutions, or are able to be proactive in environmental stewardship. And so today we have a wonderful guest. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Cherise Tolbert. I work with Otsego Land Trust here in Cooperstown, New York. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for coming on. So people can have a little bit of background. I became familiar with the area around Cooperstown and Fly Creek and where we now are upstate because of the Otsego Land Trust. I've been looking for land online for years. Pandemic hit, and we were like, we have to make a move on something. Prices are going through the roof. Yeah. But we were like, how do we maintain a house and an apartment in Brooklyn? And we're not ready to move, especially with everything happening in the world, like to totally leave everything. And we found a 15.6 acre property that's in easement. And we looked at it and it was like $20,000. And we were like, wait, we've already saved enough. We don't have to take out a loan. We don't have to then worry about the pipes freezing or someone breaking in. And we can get involved in conservation and land stewardship. And that got us into the area. We bought the property at the time. David Diaz, I think, was involved. Yeah. And it opened my mind up to a whole world of activity and conservation. So I want to give a shout out to Otsego Land Trust. Before we get into what you all do, can you tell me about yourself? Like, how you end up in love with nature, outdoors, and a little bit about your history here?
Yeah. So I was born in Mexico. I'm half Mexican and half American. My mom is from Vermont. She went on vacation, met my dad. And I grew up in a nature preserve, Yumbalam Nature Preserve on an island in Mexico. My parents were in the I'm sorry?
If we say this again, I want to make sure I heard that properly.
Yeah. So I grew up on the Yumbalam Nature Preserve on an island in Mexico. Well, we spent winters there, so 4 to 6 months a year, and then the rest of the time in Vermont in the mountains, barefoot, running around at the base of Mount Mansfield, basically. So I grew up just deep in nature. My parents were in the tourism industry in Mexico, so I was constantly interacting with people who were there for the nature. And I was, a horseback guide where I would bring people from all over the world when I was a teenager on tours of the island and stuff. And, I've swam with whale sharks and swam on the back of a turtle and like all sorts of cool stuff. My parents were divers. So I grew up just really deep in nature and love it so much. So I went on to go to UVM for undergrad, where I studied community and international development and communications in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. So it was kind of a really unique take on communications. It was more focused on nonprofits and community development and how to help organizations like land trusts really communicate their messages. So that was really a great way to get into the world of the environment and conservation. And that ended up really being my passion. Like I get to it through communications, but my real passion is nature. And then I did my master's at Newhouse at Syracuse University. Again, focusing on, it was kind of a research-based thing, but I did my thesis on the island of Mexico and how the internet had come and really changed the culture. Because before, like Carnival, for example, all of the costumes, which I used to dance in, were all about like different plants and animals. And now it's like aliens and cowboys and is everything they're seeing online. So I was really fascinated by that. So Yeah, and then we likewise moved here in the pandemic. We were first in the capital region, Albany, and then we moved out to California for 2 years. Was not our thing, not enough nature for us of not homey nature at least. And so we moved here almost 2 years ago now for my husband's position. He works at Hartwick College, and we always visited here before though, so it's a beautiful area and we're very grateful to be here.
That's awesome. Now, when you were growing up, it seems like without encouragement, nature is available to you. It's kind of
Yeah.
a a given, right?
Yes.
As you've matured and as life has taken you all over, how have you stayed connected to nature? How have you been
Yeah.
able to find ways to not end up estranged?
Yeah, that's really been actually a difficult journey, especially in the past couple of years. Like we were in San Jose when we moved to California. We were in the middle of the city, and I found that so difficult. And I really care about getting my small kids out into nature. And yeah, we would go to the playgrounds, and there's tons of playgrounds and parks, but it was all very like synthetic and created spaces. And even at the apartment we were in, I would take them outside to play in the fake river, and they would be spraying Roundup on the dandelions where my kids wanted to play. And it was just so, I just couldn't stomach it. It was horrible. And I would drive my kids a couple hours a day to go to parks on the beach and in the mountains. And, I had the luxury of doing that, but it was a struggle to just get into raw nature. And that experience really made me appreciate what we have here so easy in upstate New York and New England. And so now I really appreciate that. And I make an effort every day to get outside and love it. And I listen to all sorts of things, podcasts. I love Nature and Nourish, which is out of England. And she just has a beautiful way of talking about connecting with nature and like crafts for kids and gardening and things like that. And of course, for work, I'm engaged in it all the time. So yeah.
Yeah, and being in the Otsego County area and specifically Cooperstown, are there things really unique to the area that you found? Are there any locations or areas to explore that you really like?
Yeah. So actually Brookwood Point, which is one of the public lands that the Land Trust manages. I'm not just saying this because I work here. I think it's just so special. It's on the lake here, and it is the headwaters for the Chesapeake Bay. So actually it goes all the way to Delaware, which I had no idea about before. And there are eagles nesting there. And so I go and I love just seeing them swoop down, and they're just such a big, powerful, majestic animal that I've never had such a close exposure to before in being in this region. I'd never seen eagles so frequently, and I find that so cool. I really think the seasons here are really cool. Feeling the clouds a bit right now, but in general, I love waiting for spring and seeing the first shoots and all the different plants and animals. And I really just love the change and the shift that's constantly happening. I think that's follows the shifts of life, and I just love that.
You bring two things to mind. One, while we were up there this past weekend, we were able to walk around on our property. We ended up getting a residence up there also, so we can actually stay up there. It's the first time we could walk snow covered everything. We were up in where the hemlock and the pine is on the back part of our property, and it was so gorgeous. And all the understory and our prickly bushes and sticker thorn bushes and all the things you don't want to deal with have withered. So it actually opened up everything. The sun was coming through, and I was sitting there like, this is the first time in my life I understand the winter hiking. My
Yeah.
whole life is like, why do people go up north when it gets cold?
Yeah.
And it finally made sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I love it, especially when there's really thick snow to go out winter hiking, because there's a stillness about it, and it's so peaceful. I mean, you can't help but feel it. And I actually got the privilege of going to walk your property in the fall. So I've been up there, and it's so cool. I love like all the different, landscape or like, the terrains as you go up.
Yeah.
And so it's just really beautiful. And what a cool road, just the experience of getting to it is really beautiful too. So
Yeah, I mean, I found the Fly Creek area, the Lake Canada area, really pretty. There are all these like
Yeah.
old cow farms that now are just rolling
Yeah.
hills. And even down in Otsego, sorry, down by Lake Otsego, we went to where the Susquehanna kind of begins. I think it's near that area. And it used to be a meeting point for First Nation folks and indigenous
Yeah.
things. And I've really enjoyed that in the area, that there's this overlap of Native history or history of folks who have been
Yes.
there hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years,
Yes.
with all these modern activities and the Morse stuff and the singer company. So it's all this kind of
Yes.
development and entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
growth stuff amongst things that are very serene. And so
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that we're really interested here at the Land Trust of getting more involved with and really honoring, because some of our lands, like for example, we hold the conservation easement and manage and own Canandaigua Island, which is on Canandaigua Lake. It was used traditionally as a space for the local tribes, and we really want to find ways to honor that. And so we're kind of researching how to do that right now. And I actually have tribal heritage in Vermont. My grandparents from my mom's side all have Native roots, and so it's a really special project for me that I'm excited to spend more time on.
well, now that you get us to the Otsego Land Trust, can you tell
Yeah.
us what it is and what a land trust in general does?
Yeah, so I do presentations around the area, and one of the first things I say is we are not a bank, we're not a trust. What we hold in trust is land, not money. So I do the development communications, and I am out there scrounging for every donation. We are a community-based nonprofit. And our territory is all of Otsego County and into the surrounding counties as well. And we have over 12,000 acres that are protected by private landowners, such as yourself, where they've done the work to put it under conservation easement. And so a conservation easement is a document that gets attached to the deed of the property. So no matter what happens, if it gets inherited by the next generation, if it gets sold, that document stays with that property and it's protected forever. It is in perpetuity. So we have all of these landowners that we work with. It's 113 conservation easements right now, but soon to be a bunch more, hopefully. We've got a bunch in process. And then we also own some of the properties that we make available for the public. So hiking trails and cool spaces to be outside. We have a historic garden. And we maintain those so that people can access nature. So we are one of the only public access points on Otsego Lake, for public to go and paddle and that type of thing, and picnic on the lake. And we've got all sorts of other trails in the area. And so, so it's that balance of public lands and the private land that's conserved by public landowners, and then just trying to get as much land as protected as possible. So we're constantly looking for new landowners who want to do conservation easements and ways to do that.
And for people watching, let's say you come into it and you are a landowner, you have, 30 acres, and you want to put 20 of it into easement.
Yes.
Right. Is that possible?
Definitely. Yeah. So we are really interested in being in partnership with the landowner, and we really want it to be able to meet the landowner's needs for generations and also protect it. So you can divide up parcels in the conservation easement to, for example, have a building area that's that's outlined in the document. So that area is okay to maybe build, your grandkids' house on if they want to live there one day. But then there's the conserved part of the easement. And so we definitely work with whoever wants to protect their land to, to meet their wants and interests.
And I'm kind of taking the point of view of a person who might be skeptical, right?
Yeah.
And the idea of like, well, it's my land, I should be able to do whatever I want with it. Easements are restrictions, limitations. But it is possible to say, all right, out of my 30 acres, this 20 will put in the easement. This other 10 we can do standard use or what have you. But even within the restrictions, I've seen that there's so much flexibility so
Oh
that
yeah.
one easement might say, like on the property we own, no building at all other than an 800 square foot maintenance shed, no plumbing, you can do solar, and you cannot disrupt any of the living vegetation. Others are
Exactly.
like, you can have a two-horse farm with no more than this many buildings of said size. And so there
Yes.
is some flexibility. Is that correct?
Yeah, and you also have the freedom to live on the land. Like, I mean, it's still yours and you can still hunt. A lot of people around here are wondering if they can still hunt and whether they can still fish, whether they can still ATV ride around it, if they can create hiking trails, if they can do logging. And that sound like for most people who don't understand, like, oh, logging on conserved land, that's like for when I first heard about it, I was like, whoa, I thought the whole point was not. But we will work with landowners to create eco-conscious plants. And for some forests, it's actually healthy to pull certain trees down to develop more growth of certain kinds of trees, or there might be trees that are being targeted by invasive species and that type of thing. So we actually will, you are free to live on the land. It's just the idea that when you're not there to care for it, that whoever comes next cares for it just as well as you do. And that's what this is about.
So keep in mind, I am to anyone watching, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a specialist in this. So
Yeah.
seek people who know like the land trust. But from my understanding, because a couple of people have asked me like, what's the private public relationship? And from my understanding, the land trust is a entity that is registered as a 501(c)(3). You as a
Yes.
private landowner, you own your land. You place it in easement. The land trust helps you with the paperwork to do so, and they then help observe it and make sure that the parameters of that easement are being upheld, even if it passes to a next generation or that original owner sells it to the next owner. The land trust is the one that then makes sure the next owner knows its responsibilities and lives up to them. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, actually, that's how I got to go to your property is because we were doing our annual monitoring. And so we go and we walk every property every year, if not every other year. Sometimes we do satellite monitoring. And then like if we see anything that like, oh, that looks like a new building, like we should go check that out, then we'll go in person. But we need to be, boots on the ground at least every other year. And so we go and we walk them and we just see how they're doing and make sure that everything is being done within the bounds of the conservation easement. But we also try to provide a lot of benefit to our easement holders. We want to help you get the tax break because if your land is on conservation, you get a tax break. We want to help you if you have beavers, how to figure out how to work with them because they can really change the landscape of a property. We want to really be kind of there for landowners as you, maintain your land and manage your land and that type of thing. So there are a lot of different grants that private landowners can get. Some of our landowners have done that to do conservation projects on your property. So, you can get state money or federal money to improve the wetland or do certain plantings along riverbeds or lots of all different types of things like that. So we want to be a resource for you as well, not just making sure you're doing what you're supposed to, but we want to make sure that it's like a partnership for conservation.
Yeah, we were able to enroll both our properties in USDA conservation programs, two different kinds.
Awesome.
One for the easement would be family forestry and kind of forest management program. And
Perfect.
they help pay for the forester that you all work with in conjunction with us.
Amazing.
And it's been great for me because then the forester comes out, they walked our property with us. They gave us a breakdown of the species there, what's going on with the ash borer.
Yeah.
And a person, an outsider might think like, oh, restriction, is going to be more difficult. It limits your freedoms. And for us, it's actually given us so much more information that we then can implement in what we want to do on our property and how to be better stewards. And we've now turned that residential property, we're looking at it as an eco hub instead of a bed and breakfast or a hospitality or vacation, this and that. it really reoriented us, and we're like, look at all the plants around here, look at all the animals around here, look at all the life around here. How do we use that inspiration and bring out other people and kind of reintroduce them if they did it as children, or introduce them if they're like city folks like we were. And so again, land trust has been very integral in that process.
Amazing.
So last part on the kind of technical parts of it, we discussed if you own the property already and then want to put it in easement, there's a process. As a buyer, when I told people, I told our lawyer who helped us start our LLC, we were going to buy this property easement. He was like, I won't touch that. I don't know anything about it. The paperwork is this much thicker.
Yeah.
And he was based out of New York City. So for people who are watching this, who are in the city and are looking to move into more rural areas, finding a lawyer or finding someone in that area who can work with your local land trust will be a benefit. But for people who may not, who may be, I think, afraid of purchasing a property already in easement, what would you say to quell that fear? Because it caused us no problem at all. All the paperwork went through fine. We had no issue.
Yeah, I mean, definitely finding a lawyer that is familiar with it. A lot of the lawyers up here are, because there's a lot of protected land. But yeah, I mean, really asking questions. Ask your greatest fears and figure out, whether it can be addressed, because the likelihood is that it can. And even if you purchase a property that is under conservation easement and you want to modify the easement, that's also a possibility. We still try to protect the ecosystem, but if you need like a little extra parcel for some kind of plan you have, like for example, on one property right now, is, trying to figure out maybe putting a little bit of camping on their property. We want to work with the current landowners to make their best use of the land, in respect of the nature that's there. So definitely, the buying process for any kind of land can be very cumbersome. And the good thing about a conservation easement is that the work that goes into that is that the land is typically really well surveyed, that the deed has been checked already to go through that process. There's a lot of groundwork that goes into an easement, so that land is probably actually more protected than just any random piece of property. So in some ways, you have a better bet buying something that's in conservation.
Yeah, with our property, we received the most thorough analysis of soil content, the
Yeah.
water, the actual the Loomis. I don't even know these names, but all the like actual soil types throughout the entire property,
Yeah.
the history of what had been done on the property, the
Yeah.
any of the logging or forestry that had been done, and for us, it gave us far more information because we've
Yes.
purchased probably 4 or 5 properties. We had the most information about the property and its history up front, dealing
Yeah.
with the land trust and the easement property.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. That typically tends to be the way, because there's so much goes into an easement that it's a really robust set of information. Like if I were going to find property, I would specifically look for conservation easement property to buy myself personally, just now that I know what I know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, earlier, I think before we started, we mentioned a bit about some initiatives to involve communities in the outdoors that
Yeah.
historically may not have been so active or involved or engaged for whatever reasons. Um, how do you see you all's role in that? And I know you mentioned working with Indigenous or Native American partners, First Nation partners.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So we host an annual chainsaw training workshop for women. And that's actually like always sold out immediately. It's free, but we really want, that's traditionally women are not equipped with the skills to take care of their own land. And we really care that they have those skills. So if they want to own their own property, that they can cut down that dead tree that's looking kind of close to their house, or do whatever kind of maintenance they need. So we bring in a professional chainsaw person. I don't know the technical name, sorry. And do the training. It's a whole weekend, and we give them food and drink and stuff like breakfast and lunch, and they really get all of the skills they need to do their own maintenance of their own property using chainsaws. So that's kind of one thing that's been around for a while. But we're Also, we've written a few grants that we're really hoping to get that will do a lot more interpretive information. And we've partnered with some other organizations to apply for those grants that will offer a lot more kind of events centered around educating on the history of the land and the cultures that traditionally lived here, and have signage that talks about that. We really want to have, there are these really cool things. I don't know if you've ever been to like a museum or something where you like push the button, you get to hear them talking,
Yeah.
but we want to do that in traditional languages. And so that people can hear what was spoken here on these lands and how they were used and the plants that they used and why these lands are so important to their culture, and really inspire, hopefully, others to find connection through that also. And we really want to, we have public lands, and I really care about everybody feeling welcomed at those lands. And that we're working on adding accessibility for people of all abilities to be able to come enjoy things on our properties. And we're continually trying to find new ways to do programming and events that welcomes lots of different people from different walks of life. So that's something that's always on our minds, and we're trying to lean into even more. We were kind of dormant a little bit during COVID, and we've had a major shift in leadership here, and we're really excited for what's to come.
Yeah, I've spoken to some folks when you bring about issues of diversity or accessibility,
Yeah.
their response may be, well, it's hiking. We're not even going to try to address the accessibility. And I've
Yeah.
spoken to other folks that are a bit more flexible in the mind state and are like, well, we have enough different lands where we can try our best to provide in certain areas the accommodations that suit to the best of our ability. And you then see more activity, you see more
Yeah.
engagement. And I think sometimes you run into people who say nature and social justice don't overlap. I go into nature to get away from this political talk. So how do we move it where it's not about political talk, but about human nature connectivity? And it makes sense that we want people that look like you, look like me, that are older, younger, that are different backgrounds, able to enjoy nature.
Yeah. That is the question. I think a lot of ways that we see success being possible is making lots of partnerships with people where it's not just us saying, oh, you're welcome, but like them informing us what they need and what they want to be able to enjoy land. And then, making that a two-way street. So I really care about not like coming in and say, oh, we're going to tell you how to do it, but we're inviting that dialogue both ways. For example, something that I'd love to do, I know that there are a lot of minority students at the colleges in Oneonta, and they've had a hard time in the community. Actually, they've faced a lot of discrimination, and that's one of their biggest struggles in this area. And I think finding ways to make them feel welcome and having safe places to go out and about in the community is really important. And their diversity and equity director there is really amazing. So I'd love to work with her. It's on my radar. I actually know her personally from a previous area where we lived. So that's, a place that I'd like to develop more connectivity and partnership. It's just an example.
Yeah. Yeah. The coming out of COVID pandemic, just the world changing the way it did, seems like an opportunity for people who were in a way pushed to more rural areas who were like, hey, I'm getting out of the city. And
Yeah.
they in that way like realized, well, I actually like being in these areas. And for
Yeah.
other people who decided through that, like, and the economic turmoil that's unfolded since, who are like, I don't know if I want to keep paying to live in cities, but they're kind of tentative about exploring these rural areas due to some of the, I think, cultural concerns.
Yeah.
How I found it to be very welcoming in the Cooperstown area and in activities. How do you see nature, the love of nature, as a unifier, as a way again of getting away from that and to get away from the fear, but to come enjoy things together
Yeah.
in the wilderness? Like
Yeah.
how do you view that?
Yeah. I mean, it is where we come from. And when you get out in nature, there is no, socioeconomic, there is no background. It's just you and the elements and the animals. And, I think it's a beautiful way and very raw way to make you feel. And that feeling is very bonding. My husband wrote his master's on it was in British Romantic poetry, but he really focused on the how people talk about nature actually in writing historically, and how that's evolved socially and culturally over time. And one thing that he talks about is natural impression, and how lots of historical cultures from long ago used language around nature to talk about the self, instead of saying that the squirrel is having feelings, instead it's her hair is like the water, that type of thing, taking on nature as a part of self. And we're really able, nature, you cannot help but feel when you're in nature. That's a line that he uses, and I think that's so true. It just it affects us on a physical level, and that is who we are. On a human level, we're all humans, and getting out into nature brings us back to our humanity. And I think that's the perfect space for there to be connection and cross lines.
That's awesome. Well, with that in mind, that's almost a perfect place to wrap up. Are there any particular things you'd want us to know about, like any activities or programs or initiatives you all are working on? Make sure people know what they are, how to find you all, and this note of finding humanity in nature, whether alone or with others, is, I think, something I'll be thinking a lot about in 2024.
Awesome. I've got some good reading to send you then.
Yeah.
So I just finished creating our calendar of events for the year. We've got a lot going on, which is very exciting. But included in that is some walks on privately conserved conservation easements. So if you want to see what a conservation easement looks like, some of these walks, they're open to the public, they're free, are a great opportunity for people. So we have a blue heron rookery walk on a conservation easement in Van Hornsville. And so someone from the Delaware Otsego Audubon Society, an ornithologist, will be leading a group of people. And so this land is protected. It's a private landowner. It's actually partially a regenerative beef farm. And there's this one area where it's a bunch of trees and the blue herons nest above. So you get to walk under the blue herons nesting, and the babies hopefully will be there. So I'm very excited about this event. So that's just, one of the ways we give public access to privately conserved land, but also if you want to test something out, this is a great way to do it. We have another one. We don't know what the theme is. Last year it was how trees communicate under the ground for the film fest in the fall that Otsego 2000 does. So we partner with them, and we'll be doing another walk with them this year, and we're still developing our theme, but that will be also on a conservation easement in the area. Typically we pick something close to Cooperstown for that one. We will also, this hasn't gone public yet, but be having a conservation easement open house day, where we're hoping to invite our conservation easement holders to open their properties to the public, so everyone can go kind of on a driving scenic tour of the area and see all the different private lands and walk on them, and then have events on them, bread making and regenerative farm tours and guided walks and stuff like that. And some of them are homesteaders, so I'm really hoping they'll do some really cool stuff on their properties to welcome people in, and then it'll end in in a big party with a fire and burgers from the regenerative farm, and some vegan stuff too, because I'm vegan. And live music and stuff like that. And so we've got a bunch in the works. So if you follow us on social media, we're on Instagram and Facebook. We put our events on our website, and I'll be putting all of them up in the next week or two. So and I'll be adding registration. So our stuff does sell out, and it's free, but we book out. So definitely sign up if you want to come, and we'd love to have you.
Yeah, and Send me info because we'd like to host. I'm going to be working,
Amazing.
yeah, with Otsego 2000 to do an open spaces kind. I don't know the name yet, but like an open spaces performance thing, to where instead of
Wow.
like Tiny Desk where it's inside, instead we take musicians, do stripped down performances in really beautiful outdoor areas.
Oh my gosh.
And so if we can coordinate that, that sounds like a perfect time to do so.
We gotta talk because I know a couple people who do that in Rhode Island actually. So I can send you some info on what they do.
Yes. See, and that's the beauty. That's why we're here. Otsego 2000 presents, where we are
Yeah.
connecting with passionate, informed people who are interested in us as humans and our connection with the universe, the planet, our ecosystem, and our role as being stewards and companions.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
love it.
thank you
I'm super
again.
excited. I'm glad to know about what you're doing. I'm gonna be following you too.
Yeah, and if anyone you would suggest, send me a link, and
Okay,
we'd like to speak to them. All
will
right.
do. Awesome. Nice to meet you
Yeah, in like person, but then
in
next time
person.
we'll be
Yeah,
in
like
person in person.
we'll meet in person next time.
All right, thanks a lot.
Take